Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Hi. I'm just getting my camera set up here. Thank you for joining us today, David.
Of course.
Basically, you shared a post of mine recently um, where it spoke about the Durham Report, and it's 2 years old, and then so people in the cosmic community page where you probably shared it to your group that I'm part of. It's on Facebook with 36,200 plus members, um, and that's we should do an episode in and of on that. Just an episode just on the group and how that came to be. There's
Yeah,
also
definitely. Oh, yeah.
but uh, I wanted to go over the significance of the Durham report, why it matters that I shared old, quote unquote, old news a whopping 2 years ago, and then also that leads into the death of Seth Rich, who many people they may have heard, the meme or the not the meme, the hashtag RIP RIP, rest in peace, Seth Rich. And I want to go into all of that, along with some commentary and Q&A related to the passing of the so-called Pope. And with that, yeah, if you could please, explain for our audience here, David, kind of, what was the feedback you got on the post, and what was, what your impetus to reach out to me about that?
Yeah. So I shared it. Basically, stating here Clinton makes the front page on the New York Post 2022. Clinton cabal exposed. Drip, drip, drip. The word cabal is hitting the mainstream now. It's no longer a conspiracy theory. So we just got some comments here. That is old. I have one from 2018. And then let's see here. And then I was like, it all has been validated through the new administration. Um, let's see. New York Post doesn't make it a not a conspiracy theory. If anything, it delegitimizes it. Where is her grand jury indictment? Um, she was sent to Guantanamo Bay years ago for crimes against humanity and faced a military tribunal. So that sounds like it may be accurate. Now there's a whole long list of uh, points that Michael Perlin is making. The New York Post is owned by Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, the same company that owns Fox News. There was a Durham investigation done. John Durham, a special counsel. So this is what we were talking about earlier, where you said Durham is the attorney exposing the cabal.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a special uh what's it so here's some ABC News, and it's talking about how this is after a 4-year probe. The Durham report slams the FBI for actions in the 2016 Russia investigation, and he's a special counsel. Okay, and the FBI, they basically went after Donald Trump for ties to Russia, for rigging elections and being bribed and all this stuff. And so, what my comments to you, David, was, don't retract the post or anything like that. What you do is you comment to the person, the people who associate the most dubious. Why does this matter? It's because, as someone already pointed out in the comments, now that we have this new administration, they're cleaning out the FBI.
mhm.
Cash Patel has come in, along with Dan Bongino. I'm probably butchering his name there. Um, to clean up the FBI. And what people have to understand, and this relates to the Epstein files too, there's a lot of commentary on that and why more isn't being done, at least out in the open and visibly, is, um, with the FBI, their corruption goes all the way back to the days of J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah.
Okay. Hoover, in the post World War II period, he blackmailed everybody and their mom, and then their mom's mom, with blackmail, and he knew the dirty secrets of everything, including who killed Kennedy, to he might have known a bit about the secret space programs and the breakaway Germans in Antarctica, and then going to the moon and Mars and other parts of space, and
Yeah.
colonizing Ceres, which our good friend in the community, Tony Rodriguez, he testifies in his book, not science fiction, Ceres Colony Cavalier, about, you know, Mars colony being on an asteroid called Ceres, which is here within our solar system. I forget if it's off Jupiter or what planet. But going back to the Durham, sorry, go ahead, David.
I was just going to read this user's comment. So the first point that they said, there was a Durham investigation. John Durham, a special counsel appointed during the Trump administration, investigated the origins of the Russia probe, aka Crossfire Hurricane. His final report released publicly in May 2023 criticized the FBI for confirmation bias, but did not allege any criminal conspiracy involving Hillary Clinton. No prosecutions of Clinton or her associates came from Durham's work. Only minor, unrelated convictions happened earlier in the investigation. That's his first point.
Okay, so apparently there's a whole bunch of sealed indictments.
Yeah.
So if they've got all this other dirt on her and they don't take the Durham report and act on it because they already have 20 other investigations into her, is that a surprise to me? Like, to me, that's not necessarily an indication that they're not doing anything. I mean, the real indication to me is they're defunding all of this apparatus and they're shutting it down and they're exposing the hidden documentation and files. And to me, that's a really good sign, because if you want to clean out the FBI, you know, you don't just overnight, you know, shut down the FBI, fire everybody, hire a whole bunch of new FBI agents and go from there. No, you need to find out if there's anybody in the FBI like the John D'Souza's in our community who former FBI agent who is a prototype for Agent Mulder from the X-Files series, right? If there are any Mulders and Scullys in the FBI, and, you know, it's kind of they're mostly more Agent Skinners, you know, Director Skinners than they are probably. And I think John would agree with that. Oh, hey, James, thank you for joining us here today. The
other comment was Durham report found no grand cabal nor organized joint venture by Clinton to frame Trump in criminal conspiracy. The language used by QAnon type posters, cabal exposed, exaggerates what was actually concluded.
So that's not true. So for one thing, it's not just at this point now we're not talking about the Durham report. I don't want to be limited to what this one report found. We also have the Hunter Biden laptops. That's a plural. There's the one computer store, repair store owner where Hunter left at least one laptop with him, never came back for it. The gentleman found what was on it and he went public with it, and that's a matter of public record. Then there's a DNC server leak, and that was what led to the death, most likely, of Seth Rich. Seth Rich was a computer tech for the Democratic National Committee when they were in the lead up to the 2016 election for Hillary to win versus Trump. And in the midst of that, as their computer tech with access to all their main servers and emails, he discovered really shady and nefarious things. And it looks like he downloaded a lot of the contents of their file servers, leaked them to Julian Assange and WikiLeaks, at which point WikiLeaks did the DNC leaks material, and the DNC obviously did not like it. They figured out who did it. There's emails, it looks like, possibly later on indicating that Hillary or another one of her commanders or lieutenants were having a chat with another of their group, talking about how they were going to take care of the problem and it was
Yeah.
like pointing at Seth Rich. He was later shot in the driveway of his own home. It was like late at night. It was like taking out the garbage in his driveway or coming home late. But he was just shot. They didn't take anything, and just murdered in his driveway. And then, a lot of people say that there's pressure put on his family to just hush up about it and say to everybody, don't make our son into some political issue. But I'm not making it into a political issue. To me, if the facts are that he discovered criminal activity and then he went public with it as a whistleblower and was murdered for that, then he died a martyr. And
Right.
he should be recognized as such. And the significance of the information, even more so, that he died to leak, should be understood. And then that all of that with Pizzagate and then Epstein Island, we can go into that. That's all linked to Laura Silsby and the Clinton Foundation and how
So
they've
here's where it
taken
says.
billions.
So
Yeah.
here's where it says. The New York Post headline is real but highly misleading. It spins Durham's criticisms of FBI procedures into a broader conspiracy theory without evidence. It's an editorial stretch, not a legal finding. The Clinton cabal exposed is seriously misrepresents the truth. John Durham's investigation into the origins of the Russia probe criticized the FBI for bias, but it did not find Hillary Clinton guilty of a criminal conspiracy to expose a cabal working to frame Trump. No major new charges against Clinton or her team were filed, and much of Durham's report reinforced criticisms of law enforcement, not proof of any grand secret plots.
Okay, so um, again, we're not going to say, oh, because Durham didn't like expose all the whole Illuminati cabal, then therefore it doesn't exist game.
Right.
And what I find kind of comical about this is that since the Durham Report coming from 2016, we're beginning his investigations. We have already shown the FBI to be criminally corrupt. Like,
Right.
there's no doubt about it. Like because it doesn't say in the Durham Report definitively, according to this guy, that the FBI is shady and corrupt. Therefore, they're not. That's a ridiculous argument. I mean, when you look at the FBI today and all the clean out and how they have themselves haven't been able to provide the Epstein documents, and I don't blame that on Kash Patel. He just became the director. It's like it's not
Right.
his fault. What I believe happened is those files were redacted and they got leaked, and a lot of other files were destroyed. There's still more out there, but the idea that because Pamela Biondi, Pam Bondi, as the federal AG, snaps her fingers and writes a letter or two to the FBI, that all of a sudden she's going to get the real gold, and then now it's her fault. So I feel bad for her. She might be slow rolling it on other things, or maybe things are going on behind the scenes. But to say that there's no evidence of this or no evidence of that, there's a million points of evidence far beyond the Durham Report, and that's why we're doing this show,
Yeah.
and to do this in dedication and memory to Seth Rich.
And who was Seth Rich again?
He was the computer tech who worked for the Democratic National Committee during the lead up to their 2016 run for Hillary. I'm with her to become president.
Yeah.
And where she lost against Trump because they weren't able to rig the elections enough in her favor using the I forget the name of uh, the electronic voting machines, but I'm sure we can put it up in the when we rebroadcast this in the edited, touched up version.
Yeah.
Not Diebold, might have been Diebold, electronic voting machines. And since then, all this information is going to come out now, and it's already been leaked through the Q movement, which this person and other people obviously make fun of. But they have video of the 2020 elections being stolen, and that was run as a sting operation by the White Hats. They knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And 2024, they prevented a replay of that. And that's why Biden, when he quote unquote won in 2020, had 81 million votes. And then those 20 million there's like an extra 20 million votes in there, 20 plus, that never existed.
Yeah.
And they didn't exist for the Democrats in previous elections. And then they didn't exist for them in this recent one.
How did they put them in there? How did they?
It's ballot stuffing, and so it's a combination of things. They had people have pre-printed ballots that's the one video I'm referring to, of people bringing in vans to the one ballot center, elections voting center. Might have been in Philadelphia. They show the loading dock in a van pulling up like at 3 a.m. in the morning after polls have shut down. You're not supposed to be able to submit any more ballots, and they're just bringing in crates of like what look like ballots.
Oh my gosh.
They have other video of people just feeding in ballots that they have like a briefcase full, and they're just feeding it in and running it through. They have a lot of these electronic voting machines. This is why I'm against them. I say if you're going to use an electronic voting machine, then the person should get an anonymous number and a printout receipt showing how they voted, so that now they've got a paper trail, and everyone could come together with their paper receipt if need be, if there's to be a recount.
Yeah.
And those machines, and I've encountered them myself in the run up when I wanted Bernie Sanders, when I didn't know any better and know how corrupt and compromised he is now, at least. I mean, I thought he was the best of the candidates back then, better than Hillary. I didn't know about the white hats at the time so much. And I saw voting machines, like you'd try to tap on it and it would vote for Hillary. It would put it on Hillary. It's like, no, I want Bernie. And it would like, boop, Hillary.
Wow.
Or people, when the election workers, sometimes they'll plant blue agents. People are literally hired to ask, hey, welcome in. And if they see you're wearing a MAGA hat or anything that gives away your red, right, whatever, they'll put a mark on your ballot.
Wow.
Okay, you're not supposed to do that. Okay,
That's
then later
corruption.
on, they got all the ballots, and then they can mess with them and tamper them or throw them out.
It's crazy that all that malfeasance is going on. What can you tell us? You had mentioned earlier in our conversation before our live stream about the USAID and how they're a front for the CIA. Can you talk about that a little bit and about Operation Mockingbird?
Yeah, there's a gentleman named Jonathan Perkins who wrote the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And he does a really great there's like a great cartoonized video clip to his voiceover of what he wrote in his own book about how he used to work as an agent for the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And he would go around the world to these so-called developing nations and meet with their leadership to get them to sign their countries into these giant projects like hydroelectric power dams or shipping ports. And they would pitch the country's leaders to say, hey, you're going to borrow money from the World Bank and get IMF credits, and we're going to build you this amazing shipping port and power plant, and you're only going to owe us this much, but don't worry, as you get so much more economic development and money into your country, because the power is going to allow you to have factories and the ports allow you going to ship goods in and out, materials and blah, blah, blah. It's so wonderful. And the vast majority of leaders, unfortunately, because they're being wined and dined, and they're also being greased with money behind the scenes, and this is according to Mr. Perkins' his own testimony, they'll go along with it. And unfortunately, they're selling their countries into debt. And a big part of that system is also the USAID, United States Agency for International Development, which has a long sordid history of basically being the Boy Scout, Girl Scout mask for the CIA, because the CIA can't just go around the world into villages in Africa where they want cobalt, or they want or places in Latin America where they want bananas and coffee and other resources
Yeah.
in tin and tungsten and copper and aluminum and silver and gold. And
You
they
mentioned about how they funnel money to the news outlets, to the
oh
think
yeah, well, and
tanks, and
that's
manipulate public opinion.
exactly. So on the one hand, they've got the USAID abroad to infiltrate countries by pretending they're there to do development projects hand in hand with the IMF and World Bank groups that Jonathan Perkins worked with. And where if the leadership said no, they would send in what he calls the jackals or the assassins, the enforcers. And then on the other hand, the USAID is used more domestically and the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, is not supposed to operate. My understanding is their charter to influence or here on domestic soil. They're supposed to be more abroad. That should be more the FBI's turf.
Yeah.
And we already talked about how corrupt and terrible and evil they are already.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not ashamed or afraid to say that. I mean, now under Kash Patel, I'm willing to give him a chance because of his leadership. It's new and fresh. In terms of USAID, there's something, and the CIA, there's something known as Operation Mockingbird. Okay, and
What's that
that's
all
why
about?
what it is it's a basically military intelligence psychological operation to empower like the CIA or however they want it, whatever agents you put on them, it doesn't matter. They can change their name tag all the time to influence public opinion by basically taking covert control of news and media agencies.
Is
And so
Mockingbird just the name that for themselves, or how
it's
did
so in the military,
they
they
come up?
use a lot of code names. They
Yeah.
like a lot of this cloak and dagger secrecy stuff. So they're not gonna call it. It's the operation to like control the narrative with like taxpayer money through dirty intelligence groups to put in us on a negative narrative and to lie to the American people and the rest of the world.
Right.
That's not so catchy. So they just call it Operation Mockingbird. And just like with the Montauk Project, properly codenamed Project Phoenix, bless you,
Thank you.
is they're not going to call it the time travel project where we horribly abuse children to manipulate the timeline and open up doorways in time and space. That's they just call it Project Phoenix, right? But what they do
Sorry.
is, bless you again, they basically put their agents in the newsrooms and the boardrooms of every major media company they can. They find every influencer in the media that is susceptible who they can
who's
bribe with
also
money.
who's also owned by the cabal, all the major news outlets,
Yes,
ABC, NBC,
absolutely.
CBS. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's like the top 6 media company graphic with like Disney, MSNBC. I forget who the other big players are, but off the top of my head, but yeah, there's only about 6. There's incredible consolidation, and just like within media, within the food system now, that's probably one of the most terrifying things to me.
Yeah.
Media, we're now supplanting the old school media. Less people want to watch CNN, and they would much rather watch us and hear what we have to say because it's so much more data laden and relevant, and it
Yeah.
gets us to our Star Trek future.
Right. Interesting. What can you tell us about all of the secrecy surrounding the Pope and the Pope's death, and what this is meaning for the cabal and what's going to happen?
So, to go into the Pope, we need to go into the Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church.
Okay.
And the real roots of the Roman Catholic Church are the fact that when Christ came, around 0 AD, and then was crucified like 32 AD, died around 32 or 33, I forget which. And
Well, 33 is the number of the vertebrae on the spine.
yeah, right. And
And
then
then
there's a lot of that, and exactly, and there's a lot of metaphor and things that correlate to the body and all of that. And yes,
the
absolutely.
Kundalini energy is the Christ the oil.
Christ oil
The priest
running up
goes,
from the sacral chakra, root chakra, all the way up to the crown
which is
over the
where it's
course of each
crucified
interface.
at Golgotha, which is the skull place. So is that
Golgotha.
Golgotha? Yeah. So is that like, so it really happened, but it's also a metaphor, right?
I believe so. And then
Okay.
there were later actors and imposters of Christ, and his name wasn't even Jesus. It was
Yeshua.
Yeshua or
Yeah.
Yahushua, because the name of the Father is in the name of the Son, and the name of the Father, the Tetragrammaton, apparently is Yud He Vahe, which is the I am that is, or I am it who is, the I am that is. And so Yah, that part, the I am, Yahushua is the I am who comes to save.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And
okay.
so, okay, so there's the God who is the great I am, and then coming from the great I am, a son of his, is the God who comes to save, the I am who comes to save, or the great I am. And so, the
But
Roman Empire had a problem. You have to understand the Roman Empire.
it's
Okay,
mixed
they
in with paganism, right?
yeah, and and
And they
and then when people use that word paganism, it's even too broad a term in this case, because there are pagans who do love nature and they don't practice sacrifice,
mhm,
and they would be considered pagans. But then there are other pagans who are literally doing black magic, dark sorcery,
yeah.
involving sacrifice and curses and contracts with dark beings of all sorts. And then that's a different side of paganism. And it's like magic. There's good magic and there's bad magic, right?
But in a nutshell, though, the Vatican is the most evil organization on the face of the planet, or one of
Most
them.
evil, organized, and long-standing, and visible, I'd say.
Yeah.
Let's just say that largest systemic, visible, international, long-standing organization.
So can you
Because you probably have
talk?
other evil secret societies within them.
Yeah.
Okay, that go
Right.
back and
Oh,
far
so there's even
early.
more evils. Okay. So can you go into more detail about that? Like what makes
Well,
them what they are? And
so then now we're going even broadening it and going even further back. When you look at the Roman Catholic Church and the Roman Empire, right? What was the previous empire that was still ruled by these same Luciferian cabal bloodline elites? Was like Egypt. And then before that would have been like Sumeria and Babylon. And then before that, was the Great Flood, was before that Atlantis, and before that Mu. And there's a whole periods of time where Atlantis and Mu or Lemuria were fighting each other. And then the great cataclysm, the floods 10,000 years ago, leading then to the Babylon, Assyrian types. And in there, you've got humans who would make deals with the Anunnaki, ETs, to enslave humanity for their own nefarious purposes, like mining gold and us as a food stock and just overall slave source.
which of the Anunnaki? The Dracos?
Well, no, the Draco are reptilians. More Draco, they're the Draco, especially the Siakar Draco reptilians are like the giant, um, reptilians that have like a lot of times they'll have wings, and they're the bigger ones, and they're considered more the royal castes of the the Draconians, the Siakar, especially the albino. Then they have like a color pecking order as well.
Mhm.
Um, Down to the Anunnaki, the Anunnaki and Draco are, um, not the same. It's more the Draco or the Alpha Draco reptilians that have a giant empire that spans huge amounts of space, going all the way back toward to Orion and one of their stars, Thuban. That's one of the factions. And then you've got, the Anunnaki, who are a relatively advanced ET race separate who came here later on, relatively late in the game, to kind of hijack the grand human experiment that the other ET races had taken their genetics and invested into us. And we've been here however many tens of thousands of years, maybe hundreds of thousands, before the Anunnaki arrived. They were also enslaving us to mine gold on Mars, back when Mars had an atmosphere. And there was apparently another planet named Tiamat. And what Audrey Walters in our community and others say is the name Maldek, another name for this former planet Tiamat, used to be called Maldek. Well, apparently the Galactic Federation types, the real ones, not the imposters, there are a lot of them too, but I take it that there are some good Galactic Federation types who would rather, humanity not be totally enslaved to the Dracos and the Anunnaki and these bloodline families who are their puppet pawns,
Yeah.
the sellout humans who are the worst. And that Maldek in Draco Reptilian means our turf.
Huh. Interesting.
So it's like an epithet to the like, no, don't call it that. That's why they say don't call it Maldek, please. They say call it Tiamat. And Tiamat was blown up sometime when there was some galactic warring. I don't know exactly which factions, but that's apparently what became our Kuiper belt. So that's why we've got this huge asteroid belt all over us, because there was this giant planet bigger than Earth that got blown up. And around then, Mars got scarred and had its atmosphere blown off of it as well.
Right.
And it still does have a thin atmosphere, and there are currently people already on Mars via the secret space programs. And then, of course, Elon Musk publicly makes a big deal of we're going to Mars, when people who testify in the community from being in the programs say we've been there for decades after World War II, and with time travel possibly before. Yeah. And then there's been intelligent life up there, like I was saying, for millennia.
Right. Let's get back to the Vatican, though. What is their goal? What makes them the most evil organization on the planet? What does the Pope's death mean for the Vatican, and what is their future?
Great questions, David. So with the Vatican, I was talking about like the Anunnaki. Let's say they're mating or genetically experimenting on humans to make us more susceptible to be their perfect slaves. And they would have human bloodlines that they preferred for different reasons. Maybe those bloodlines, by doing certain sacrificial rites, were more able to allow their energies to come in and possess the human bodies. Okay. So that's why they're so focused on this interbreeding, and their Rh negative bloodlines are an indication of Nephilim or Anunnaki genetics, as opposed to Rh or rhesus positive, rhesus factor for us more closely related to the Earth hominids.
Yeah.
And so these bloodlines, just like they've come down through the times of at least Atlantis and then Babylon, and Assyria and down to Egypt, which the current occult elite, like, they really love Egyptian magic for a lot of these reasons. Down to Rome. Yes, it's all related. The Egyptian stuff comes down to the Roman stuff, which is where the Vatican now comes about. So the Vatican is the latest incarnation from the previous empire, with the U.S. being the current empire. It was currently crumbling. The prior empire was the Roman Empire. So you got to think of the seat of power. So if you're greedy and evil and nasty and you want to take over the world and enslave humanity, where are you going to be headquartered? The most powerful country, right? The Rome was the seat of that in its day. Yeah. And so the Vatican, for the bloodline Illuminati, derp state, Luciferian cabal, negative Anunnaki and negative reptilians, because not all Anunnaki are negative, not all reptilians are negative. Some are really great and amazing and wonderful. And the hidden, the positive dragons of wisdom, are a wonderful manifestation of dragon or reptilian energy. The positive ones, right? But The Vatican, because it's a tool, a mechanism of these elites, it's going to do everything to enforce a worldview. In this case, we'll give it, it's a religious worldview way of looking at the world, where there's a heaven, there's a hell, there's the Immaculate Conception. They've got their Trinity. There's original sin. And then they keep adding on to it and perverting it more and more. Now you need a priest speaking Latin to talk to God. You don't want to read the Bible by yourself. You can't, commune with God yourself. These fruits of the Spirit, like clairvoyancy and laying of the hands, healing, and telepathy, those are all witchery and demonic. And then that gets us into the Council of Nicaea,
Yeah.
because and where the Vatican came out of, from the Roman Empire. When Christ came, 2,000 years ago, and brought his message, it totally was upsetting to the Roman world order,
Mm-hmm.
because what Christ is saying was exactly the opposite of sacrifice your children to Molech and Baal and Baphomet, or whoever these other nasty beings are. They're not gods. They're nasty lower vibration beings who are laughing at us and taking advantage and harvesting the loosh, and they're demonic in nature. Okay, they're lower. They're very nasty and negative, and then they have their own interests in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and so when Christ first came and said that, he ran into a lot of resistance, but he also gained a followership. Now, fast forward 300 years later, okay, Council of Nicaea, 328 AD. All this time, the Romans, the emperors, who they're happy to sacrifice children, and they think it brings them power,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the pacts they enter into. They did not like people who said they followed the path of Christ. Okay, and we're drawing the symbol of the fish to each other to indicate that they were cool and could talk about it.
Yeah.
Without being, rounded up and thrown to the lions or crucified or impaled. And you can't have any ruling class be in power where the official religion is this paganism involving all these terrible things. And it's basically loser-fairyism. I lump it all together.
Yeah.
They and they basically had an issue because there was like a time when half the population in the Roman Empire spread all over. They were now converting. And even though it was underground and you could get executed if you were caught, people were doing that. And you can't have any empire last where such a huge majority, or 50% at least, are flouting the official religion, the official way of being. Because back then, the official religion, that was everything.
Yeah.
Because you had the blending of government and the religious, so-called spiritual leadership. And
So they
so
perverted the original message of Christ and Christianity, and then that's what made the Vatican, is what you're basically saying.
exactly, they co-opted it. And so in the Bible, where Brother Yeshua is speaking about, you can't take the new wine that's pure and wonderful that I'm bringing, the knowledge, the message, the gospels, and mix them with the old wine. What happens when you take brand new wine and stick it in an old wineskin with moldy old wine?
It's gonna go bad, obviously.
It's nasty and terrible and spoiled. You have to keep it pure.
Right.
And so the Council of Nicaea, they were figuring out ways to officially glom this budding quote unquote Christianity together with what they really wanted to go, their old school stuff. The nasty paganism, the nasty side of that, involving sacrifice and demonic beings, and run with that. And so that's where the Vatican came about. And there's so many things that the Catholic Church does that it straight outright says not to do in the Bible per the message of Christ. Like, you don't just pray brainlessly, 50 Hail Marys, 70 Hail Marys, like none of that. And even in the so-called mainstream Bible today, Christ's message has been very much perverted and changed up. So the King James, was responsible for the latest bastardization of the Bible, was a 33rd degree Freemason and demonologist and
Wow.
sorcerer.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And the reason why the King James Version and most Bibles you'll find in the Western world today only have 60, I forget if it's 64 or 66 books, is because the Freemasons with King James, and they're also linked to the Vatican, they chopped down books like the Book of Enoch. Okay. And they call those books the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
But the Ethiopian Bible has 88 books. And the reason why is the Freemasons with King James and his ilk hadn't gotten down to enslave and take over that portion of Northern Africa in time to bastardize the Bible.
Yeah.
And, and so, Jesus really is a transliteration of Hail Zeus.
Oh,
Hey
right,
Zeus.
right. Jesus, right. So
Right.
what? But I guess what my question is, what is going on with them? So what do they have to do with reptilians, and what is their goal? Just they're losing. Obviously, they're losing power, but they just want to keep. They just want to keep humanity under their fist. Is what it seems like. They want to just.
They want to keep running us as a farm.
Okay.
Okay, where a psychic louche adrenochrome body parts. Hi, Christy. Thank you for joining us today in our live audience. Christy Campbell is a Montauk survivor and also Secret Space Program and also Mothers of Darkness Castle. And the way that's possible is in these programs, you can have through mind control, they can fracture off alters or different personalities that have their own pre-programmed personality. Then they can take that alter, one of those alters, and you can have many, and transfer that consciousness with a fraction of your soul energy to help drive that clone body with that altered programmed consciousness to run missions. Um, whether they're the things that are spoken about on TV and in movies a lot, like assassination and stuff, but then more of the shady stuff, like for breeding programs and sexual slavery. I'm sad to say. And so I'm really glad. It's an honor to have Christy here, Christy Campbell, today. And she'll also be at her 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference this July in Florida, where you'll also be, David, getting to, broadcast to the cosmic community group.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So basically, what you're
You
telling me
were
is,
you were asking about the reptilian connection.
yeah, and then
His
also, can you? I was going to mention the Red Shoe Club if you can mention something
Oh
about
yes.
that, and the sex trafficking and what they're doing with to children and all that horrible stuff.
So these ancient bloodline cults,
Mhm.
the Vatican is a stronghold organization front for them.
Are there different
Because
factions in the Vatican? Are there different?
there apparently are
Okay.
Leo Zagami, who he's written the books Confessions of an Illuminati. I've got
Well,
like 5 or 6 of them on my shelf up here. Um, and he might be like on like the 8th or even higher by now. But he speaks to being a member of the P2 Freemasons,
mhm.
the duo pay or whatever, Freemasons, from out of Rome there. And so there are some wild affiliations there, but apparently he's spilling a lot of their secrets, and that's very valuable. And yeah, what they do is, again, a lot of these negative rituals they do allows for the possession of reptilian energy to come into their human bodies while they're sacrificing children and invoking demonic entities. And so by spreading out through the Catholic churches all over the place, they're always buried with they're always built on top of the remains of a saint. So all of that is basically about nepotism or death magic. Okay, the idea that there has to be a piece of a dead body of a saint underneath or in part of enshrined within each Catholic church.
Hmm.
Um, then you got the Freemason connections and the corrupted Knights Templar and the Knights of Malta and the Committee of 300 and the Shriners, and the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Scientologists. They're all linked to the same cult network
To
over
the Vatican,
thousands
back to
and
the Vatican.
back to the Vatican.
Hmm.
So it's a network. They're all interrelated as being part of the Luciferian dark side's apparatus to put all of us on a transhumanism timeline.
So okay,
By
I was a Jehovah's Witness for 5 years when I was very young,
Mhm.
and part of what the Jehovah's Witnesses preached was that they were the one true religion. All false religion was
Sure,
Babylon the
a
Great.
lot of them preach that. Get in line. Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, but I don't understand that though, because if they're part of that group, why would they be calling themselves false? You know what I mean?
Well, it's kind of like, why does Coca-Cola do RC other brands of cola?
Why?
Even though, why don't they just push Coke? Okay. Or is it that Coke and Pepsi are really friendly competition? Because while they supposedly compete, they crowd out everybody else,
Hmm.
and they both dominate the field.
So they're linked to the
And we're
same
all
source, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's all the same side. It's all, it's like you got an octopus and you're looking at different tentacles, and you might say, well, why are the different tentacles working together? Well, it's because they're part of the same octopus.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted you to validate that. So yeah, but that's what they talk about, and then they talk about Babylon the Great. I'm sure you've read Revelation, where it talks about Babylon the Great is represented as a harlot, and she's on top of a
And
seven-headed
that's the
wild beast.
Vatican. The Roman Catholic Church is the whore of Babylon,
Okay.
because what she's doing is she's rallying all the world religions kind of together to be one big world religion. And that's where they wanted to trot out their Antichrist.
So then, who
And
is the beast? Who is the seven-headed beast?
Well, so it could, in many ways, or the seven-headed beast is probably more a metaphor for the different groups and organizations, like the different countries and groups,
Yeah.
and bloodlines, possibly.
Okay.
But you have to understand that a lot of this um, book of Revelations and prophecy, the Illuminati cabal have been using time travel as well, among other nasty tricks and things, to manipulate our timeline to get all of us to believe in this end times biblical narrative,
Hmm.
because they gather a lot of power off of it.
Okay.
And so and that's where, I caution people to not read too literally into some of these writings.
Because they were manipulated through time travel, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. Like the idea that Christ is going to return, I'd argue, and many others would argue, that it's not about Christ, the person, coming back. It's Christ consciousness coming back and being manifest in as many of us as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're certainly at a huge schism in time, especially the past. Like, there just so much is happening with the world, technology wise, spiritual wise, um, politically, economically. It's like this huge juncture in time. And
We've turned the corner for the better.
yeah.
It's finally happening, even though we're deep in the thick of it. The darkness, the bad guys, led by the Vatican and other groups, taking over our politicians and celebrities all over the world, and corporations, and rigging the justice systems and all that, and taking out as many good people as they can and poisoning the rest of us.
Mhm.
That's coming to an end. Their power structures are falling. Things like you mentioned, the Ninth Circle cult. That's basically a cult where they do certain Luciferian rituals, whether at the Vatican or underneath it and other places, because they have a whole underground tunnel network and underground bases and catacombs and nasty stuff, apparently. And it's what I'm told by many people who've been there or remote viewers or go there in the astral on missions to these places. And they sacrifice a child and then take the skin of that child and turn it into shoes, which are then dyed red. And then I've shared the post, and we can find it online, of a pope where it shows his feet, and it's like they're these leather shoes, but they look like a really kind of distinct or different type of leather, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also photos of, might have been Madeleine McCann's father, together with a bunch of other high level, or not other, because he didn't, who knows who he was before the Madeleine McCann abduction, that he's with a group of look like power player corporate men in suits, a whole bunch of them, and they're all wearing red shoes. And so the idea is to enter certain levels of power within this Luciferian Illuminati cabal. You have to submit yourself to their rituals.
Ugh.
So you have to
Horrible.
show up. If they say, oh, it's Halloween, which to them, Samhain is a big Luciferian, and there's great aspects to it too. It's not all bad, but the inverted, distorted form, they take advantage of what should otherwise be a sacred time of year when the veil is so thin, and then they want to invoke as much darkness through
Right.
that as they can. And so they'll summon their minions to have to do rituals, because they believe that in submitting energy and sacrifice to these dark demonic beings, it's helping to lock our timeline onto a negative path.
Mm-hmm.
And they have done a lot of damage to our timeline by doing that, apparently. But it's going to be cleaned up.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait for that day when and it seems like every day the veil is being lifted a little bit more and more, and people are just becoming more aware of what's going on, especially when we have these types of live streams.
Oh yeah, it's now with this current administration and with all the receipts coming out on the COVID scamdemic and the bioweapons, and what people like Reiner Fulmick have been saying this whole time and being persecuted and prosecuted for, to all the 9/11 stuff, the JFK Jr., JFK and RFK and MLK Jr. assassinations, and all the dirt on the CIA and the FBI, the connections to Israel, unfortunately, and the Mossad, their intelligence agency, along with the CIA and other groups. There's a lot of stuff that's being revealed, and then there's a lot of that. There's negative agencies, like we were speaking about earlier, are being defunded. And then by defunding them, that's a wonderful preliminary step, weakening them, essentially, bleeding them dry, firing off their personnel. That then makes it much easier to round them up and discover who the ringleaders are and go from there. And I know a lot of people complain online, well, I don't see any of that happening. Well, maybe you're not looking hard enough.
Yeah.
maybe you need to find better sources, and maybe you need to have an open mind and not keep discounting this information over and over until it starts to sink in.
Yeah. And I'm hearing from a lot of people that Trump was friends with Epstein and he has Epstein connections. What do you have to say about that?
He was. Trump ran in the same circles with Epstein, up until, my understanding is 2009 is the report, when I think it was 2009. But apparently Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago and he was trying to fondle like a 14-year-old towel girl at the pool there. And word got to Trump, and that was the point where he cut off all ties. He banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago and had nothing to do with him from there.
Okay.
And so, for me, I'm always going to emphasize this. It's not about Trump. For all we know, it could be a body double by now. or a clone, and then is it still
Trump,
Trump, right?
a clone of Trump.
Possibly with time travel and consciousness travel, transfer, and avatars and clones, and even you could even theoretically, if Trump did get harmed in this timeline and needed to be replaced, it's possible to go to a parallel timeline, find a close enough Trump, right, and grab him over to this one. And
Because
that's
time is
Montauk
fluid.
Project stuff.
Time isn't a direct line like we're taught to believe. It's completely fluid.
No, and that's why you got these Mandela effects, especially, or one reason why.
Mm-hmm.
But Trump really it's about him, any white hat groups behind him. Okay, the white hats are the positive military formed in the days of like Eisenhower, who didn't
Yeah.
like seeing what was happening, and who literally gave a warning. His outgoing presidential speech was "Beware the military industrial complex." He left out "Beware the military industrial congressional media secret space program Illuminati complex and all that." But he said quite a lot, and then also white hats apparently came from the wake of the JFK assassination in Dealey Plaza, 1963, where they swore that they were going to get whoever did this, and they were going to protect Johnny Jr.
So
And
why
then
isn't
there's
anybody talking about that? About the assassination, the report? The report came out a couple months ago, and we don't really have any talk on that right now. You know?
well, when you say how come everybody, when you say everybody, in my Facebook feed, plenty of people are talking about it.
Oh, okay.
But when you go out into general mainstream society, when you look at any lamestream media outlet, they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of people, they kind of measure how much information is out by how much they see it on the nightly news. And that is the last place you want to look for confirmation of this stuff.
Nobody's talking about the giant columns underneath the Pyramid of Giza on the mainstream news. That just shows you how they're trying to mislead everyone. And it's all over Facebook. It's all over TikTok, Instagram,
Exactly. And
but not
that's
one
where
mention of it on there on the regular news.
and that's where we're building outlets like my own full disclosure network with our community and an amazing team to basically subvert and replace the lamestream outlets, because honestly, you turn on any of the lamestream outlets and look at their content and look at what we've covered in any 5-minute segment for our little show here today. And I thank you for being with me, David. This is kind of a spontaneous thing we decided to do. This is pre-launch of the Full Disclosure Network, when we really launch with the app, the associated full disclosure cryptocurrency. And also you're helping me to iron out some of the rough spots here, so I can get my production game up and offer the best to everybody.
Yeah, it's an honor. It really is an honor to be here and on your platform. It's a lot better than Facebook. I can tell you that.
Yeah. Facebook's wonky. They're intentionally bad. We know someone, or I know someone who knows someone who was with Facebook groups, and Facebook groups was becoming so successful that Facebook didn't like it.
Wow.
Because you had all these people forming their own intentional communities, monitoring their own media, and not watching all the commercials and crap, and going with a mainstream narrative that Facebook wanted to push. And so that's where you had groups of like hundreds of thousands of people in the died suddenly Facebook groups, documenting at the height of the scamdemic and with the jab rollouts, all the injuries and the deaths and the shady dealings that were being revealed by people really wanting to help everybody. Yeah, and the Facebook shut a lot of those groups down, and then they nerfed groups.
Right. That's interesting. I wanted to see if there were any questions. Did anybody have any other questions? Because we are at 1 hour actually.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like we have any right now.
And that's fine. I think we've covered a lot of ground. If you have maybe one last one, we can address it, or we can sign off now.
Well, I think I wanted to ask just one last question. So, what is now that the Pope is gone now? What does that mean for the Vatican? They still have the Gray Pope. They still have the Black Pope. What's their future at this point?
Okay, excellent. So the white Pope, Pope Francis, who just passed away, supposedly, he's not the real power behind the Vatican and the Roman
Right.
Catholic Church. And it's not the Black Pope either. Apparently, it's the Gray Pope, and there's always Facebook posters and memes indicating that's a Pepe Orsini.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pepe Orsini. Okay.
Yeah, and that's according to these posts. So don't hold me to that. But the significance is you have to look at the announcement date. There's huge significance there. April 21st is the 111th day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And so people who are really into gematria have pointed out that 111, it's an angel number. And that's rare or unheard of.
That's also when Rome was founded, the 21st of April.
Okay. And right. And then there's this inversion there. But in general, it's a good number. And in general, a lot of these announcements that these power elites or wannabe the global elites use are like Luciferian numbers. Usually, it's some variation of the 666. So, like with the death of the Queen, apparently they announced her death like 666 was either days or some like weeks after some other significant date.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think it's a good sign that Easter Monday was when they announced his death for many reasons. One, David Purcell, because he was in a Galactic Council meeting saying the tide has turned, the light has won. Okay. So to me, this is an indication of a changing of hands of power from the old Luciferian guard to the new earth people.
Okay.
And so I see that as happening. So I think the Vatican is only going to continue to decrease in power. For one thing, hey, Christy Lewandowski, excellent to have you here as well, in our live audience today. Their power is going to continue to wane. For one thing, when you look at a lot of the rituals around the Pope's passing, and I've been sharing some on my own Facebook feed, dumpster fire of a platform that Facebook is, as censored and banned and edited as it's been. We've been talking about it in Facebook groups and the Died Suddenly groups being canned. This changing of the guard is a really good thing. Basically, it a lot of around the Pope's funeral, it's showing the public, the rest of us, how just scary and nefarious and malevolent they are. The fact that they had this disgraced former, I think, Cardinal Richard Mahoney, a convicted pedophile, molester, sex offender, be the one to close the coffin for the Pope's coffin. Really, for real. That tells you they're putting it in our face. They are not hiding it anymore.
That's
That's
sick.
right.
So was that his real corpse, do you think? Or was that like a wax replica or?
Oh, well, I believe that that's a body double of the
Okay.
Pope, and a really bad one who has been replaced for a while now.
But he
And
died of natural causes, obviously, right?
who knows? Who knows how he died? Who knows if he was poisoned, he was taken out. They did or maybe they did a ritual. Someone did a ritual because they wanted to, because they're those levels of the occult. They're dealing with like magical and spiritual and psionic warfare as well as the old school cloak and dagger, poison or bullet to the back
Yeah.
sort of thing, or poisoning you in the hospital via your medical care.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to say.
That's crazy.
But the idea is like he's just a figurehead, just like the
Yeah.
queen, and
Right.
just like so many of these politicians. And these elites, they like to again utilize certain numerology to kind of like advance their narrative. They're literally casting spells with the dates that they announce the deaths and how they announce it and who they, maybe murdered because someone was going to be a whistleblower and they don't talk about their death, but then they'll eulogize this other person. And that happened
Yeah.
recently in Hollywood where they were talking about Gene Hackman, but they weren't talking about, I forget what her name was, Michelle Trachtenberg, who was
Hmm.
a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and who there are many indications that she was an MK Ultra victim
Hmm.
of the Hollywood process.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I've
whole
heard.
Disney Nickelodeon thing because
Yeah,
she
I've
was
heard
Harriet the
stories.
Spy.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard about that. Well, yeah, like I said, I was talking about earlier, I came into this just wanting to know about alien disclosure and wanting to just start a fan club for a show, and it just goes into such a complex web, and you just when you go down that rabbit hole, it's far. It's a lot
Yeah,
of information to assimilate, and that's why we have these talks. And even I
we're
don't think
mapping it out. We're mapping out the cosmic zoo and the good white hats. Hopefully, we'll get to discover who they are along the way, and really, it's a lot of know thy enemy. So that's why we like to talk about the loser fairy and elites. We're not fetishizing them. I'd much rather expose them and mock them, and bring the power back to the people.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As much as it's as much as I hate to talk about the negative stuff, we kind of it has to be done to an extent because people need to know about what's really going on, and we talked about that earlier too. And so, as unpleasant as it may be, we have to discuss it. We can all talk about living in the new earth and love and light and peace and harmony and all that, but we still have all this horrible stuff going on, the sex trafficking, the evil rituals, the people being murdered, just the cabal. There's still their influence. So, but they're losing their grip on humanity, and that's why we have these live streams. And I'm so thankful for all your information, Brian. And it's like you're really a beacon of knowledge for everyone. And I just can't thank you enough for shedding light on all this.
Cheers, David, and cheers to everyone who joined us today. Please join our Facebook group on the Cosmic Community. David's the head admin and founder of the group. I can You can find more information on the Full Disclosure Now conference this July at fulldisclosuremovement.org, and then also go to fulldisclosure.network. And I am now kicking off my Full Disclosure Friday newsletter,
Oh
which is
wow,
going
that's
to have a
gonna
lot of
be
highlights. Yeah, and then
awesome.
that's going to build up along with the Full Disclosure Network as we get our app ready to launch, and then more the full on website platform. So this is a precursor show in the lead up to that.
Yeah,
So happy Sunday, everybody, and
yeah,
thank you, David.
yeah. No problem. Lots of exciting things going on. So yeah,
Oh
we'll
yeah,
do this. We'll do this again. We'll just have we'll talk about anything going on in the mainstream media. Anything that comes about in the community. I'm also here for questions. So I'll see all you guys out in the community. And once again, it's been such a pleasure, Brian. Thank you so much for all the knowledge that you impart to us.
cheers. All right. And thank you, Christy, James, and other Christy, among others. All right, bye all.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for being here. Bye bye.